He's going to share with you today some bad habits and how to get on the other side of them. This is Leah Richheimer for the Ladies Talk Show, and stay tuned. Step by step, we're going to talk about the 7 habits to avoid in your marriage. And we are very welcome. Welcome, Rabbi Nissel. We're very happy to have you. We want to know, what is the number one habit that people have that if they avoided, their relationship would be closer?
Okay, this is, first of all, I'm so excited to be here. I work a lot with college-age students, and I see the same pattern again and again and again. First comes love, then comes marriage, and then comes a baby in a baby carriage. Wrong.
Karit's laughing. She's like, ah! You didn't know we were getting song and dance here, Rabbi. This is great. Okay. So why is that wrong? We heard that since we were little. Why is that wrong?
But the problem is that what happens is that, it's great to fall in love with someone. It's great to have a beautiful relationship, but to take it to the next step, to call it marriage. So marriage is something that we take extremely seriously. And the idea of marriage, the institution of marriage, which literally goes back to the beginning of time when God said to the Jewish people, I would like to marry you. The first famous marriage that is entrenched in our history is between man and God. And the Jewish people were told, we are partners with God and we are going to stand for something. We are going to build something incredible. We are going to make a difference in this world. And after that, every single marriage, without exception, every single marriage, Jewish, not Jewish, throughout the world, doesn't matter who you are, when you create that bond, you are creating a bond with a mission. And the reason is very, very simple. Because, be honest, it's 2021. It's time to get with the program, everybody. You don't really need the institution of marriage if it's just going to be love. You guys can be partners. You guys can legally be partners without officially being married. You can live together. If you want to leave, you can leave. You can enjoy each other's company. You can decide, I've had enough, I'm moving on to somebody else. But that's not a marriage. A marriage means that you make a commitment, that we're out on a project, that the two of us are going to change the world in our small little teeny weeny but sweet little way.
So you're saying that marriage, you had said mission. What do you mean mission? What's the mission? How does that how does marriage make it a mission?
Okay, so that changes from couple to couple. Every single couple has to have their own sweet little vision of what they're trying to do. So for example, my wife and I, Debbie's from Memphis, Tennessee. She, by the way, she'd love to be here, but she's off taking care of our new grandchild. Woohoo, go us.
Yeah. Go us. Yay. Yeah. Okay, go.
Debbie's from Memphis. I'm from London. In a sense, it's a mixed marriage. One of us is a Brit marrying an American. Well, guess what? We really wanted very, very badly to have a home that would be open, where everyone could feel welcome at our Shabbat table or just to drop in. We wanted to have that kind of home, I guess, imitating the home of Abraham and Sarah, this open home that is welcoming for everybody. And that's it. We wanted to use our home as a sort of a jumping board for making teens and students and whoever may be that walks in into happier and more fulfilled people. And our kids grew up with that atmosphere. Well, our kids, I mean, it's a crazy thing, but my kids, a lot of them are married now, and they're doing the same thing to the next generation. And guess what? We both saw it with our parents. My mother, bless her soul, during the war years, she saw her parents, this is in London during the Blitz, every square inch of her house was there filled with kinder transport, with children that had come over from Europe, from Germany, and they were taking care of them. And so we built our marriage with this vision of what they wanted, of what we wanted. What I'm trying to share with you is that every couple, before they get married, they should say, what is our home going to look like on our 30th birthday, on our 40th birthday, on our 50th birthday? They have to see that long-term vision that they're trying to build something special.
Okay, if they haven't done it before they got married, what can they do about it now?
Okay, so first of all, a little bit, it's a great question, because the truth of the matter is, very often when you're in your early 20s or mid 20s, the vision you have is not necessarily so realistic. Sometimes you have to recalculate. Okay, you sound like, whatever it is, that woman in ways, idiot, you're on the wrong street. Sometimes you got to figure this out again. And sometimes you got to figure it out afresh. And you just stumble into a marriage. And very often people get married very young. They don't know what they're doing. And then comes a baby in a baby carriage. And then the three of them have to grow up together. That's the way it works. Somehow or other, at some point, you got to figure out, what are we doing more than just being a male and a female, children under a roof? So you're right, Leah, you can keep on changing your vision, or you can create it for the first time at that moment that you start to think, what am I trying to do with this incredible thing called marriage?
Wow, fantastic. Okay, we're having a question coming in, so just give it 1 second. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, no, somebody's asking that all these types of things things are very practical, and people obviously everyone wants to make their marriage better, but it needs, what are the practical things that they do with all this information? Meaning, how do they make it day to day when life is so overwhelming,
crazy, and
like when Rabbi said that then comes the baby in the baby carriage. Now there's a baby, right? So everything goes out the window, and everything you said you promised each other is out the window. So how do you practically make that happen?
Okay, so you're jumping to one of my many other habits. That can I jump ahead and
yeah.
Okay, so one of the habits that we have is the idea of having what's called private moments. So this is absolutely crucial. Again, I'm using my wife and myself as an example, but I think most of our marriages are like that. People are overwhelmed. They have careers. They're busy. They're pushing their limits in every single direction. Everyone needs time out. It's an incredible thing. The rabbis give us this analogy that the Jewish home is like the ancient Jewish temple. I mentioned that the marriage of man and God is the prototype, in a sense, of what a marriage should look like. So, and in the Jewish temple, there's a place called the holy place, which has got like a menorah, which symbolizes like the Shabbat candles. It's got the shulchan, where the special bread was played out, which corresponds to the Shabbat table with everything that smells beautiful. But then there's that room called the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies is the private room that no one is allowed in except for the high priest. On the holiest day, Yom Kippur, he goes in representing the Jewish people, and it's very private. What goes in there is super duper private. Every healthy home has to have, I guess like in practice it's called the bedroom, but it has to be a place that is private. In practice, I'm a huge fan. Young couples, I push them, have a date night. I tell them, go out on vacation. I actually had a story. Unfortunately, the story did not end well, but let's pretend it did. A couple of years ago, a couple that I knew were having strains in their marriage. They were married to their careers. I told them, you guys have to take a weekend off and drop everything behind you and go to the Caribbean and have fun and focus on each other. And they loved the idea. And then I said to them the following words: promise me that you will leave your phones behind. And when I said those words, they looked at me and said to me, Rabbi, too much. Okay, you're pushing your luck over here. And they couldn't do it. They continued to be in touch with everything that they left behind on their vacation. They were not focused on each other. They were not focused on working together as a team. And it did not have such beautiful consequences. The point I want to make is that it is crucial. Every couple, knowing their own unique dynamics, should be able to take time out, focus on each other, recalculate, go through starting off with their own marriage, afterwards focusing on each one of their kids, and making sure that their vision that they had when they married each other, or the last time they said, this is what we're going to do, that they're staying focused.
Wow. Okay. Did that answer it, Sarit? Yeah, you're good.
That's definitely an answer. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, good. So let's go on to the next habit. So we have get a shared vision. And if you don't have one to work, if they don't have one, they can actually go out on a date night and have a conversation about what do you want our vision to be. I remember once a rabbi told me many years ago, pick one mitzvah that you're going to excel at, you and your husband. Pick one thing, whether it's hachnasas orchim and entertaining guests, whether it's, having, being, doing chesed for people on the block and taking care of people and getting their food for people who don't have, or if someone's sick, getting them their food they need. Everybody should pick one mitzvah that means something to them, that feels like this is the contribution they're going to make to mankind, to them, to themselves, to their family, to their community, and to the world. And so that takes some introspection, it takes some conversation, but that's what you would suggest for this first one. Yeah, is get a mission.
Yeah, okay, but the mission does not have to be super specific. Like I mentioned the example that we wanted to have a house with guests. In the biblical homes, that would be Abraham and Sarah. You have Isaac and Rebecca, who were very private people, and their home was more like a mystical home. There was more a spiritual home, and their focus was more on spirituality. Jacob, in his marriage with Rachel and Leah, was totally focused on the kids. We are here to bring kids into this world, 12 of them, a whole 12 tribes, but each one has to come out perfect, unique, special, different from the rest. They were totally kid focused. So it doesn't have to be one particular mission. Obviously, in so many marriages, the spouse, husband and wife, each one can have their own thing that they do that the other one doesn't do. One can be into whatever it may be, into her hobby or into whatever that particular mitzvah that she's into. She could be running, like for example, Birkat Cholim, which means taking care of the sick. That's her thing. Her husband's not her thing. It doesn't make any difference, because when you look at the general view of how they work together, the interaction, you feel this is a home that stands for something.
Got it. Okay, let's go to the next habit. What's the next habit people should avoid?
Leah, just a quick, what's it called? Is that, I know a rabbi just answered that, but is that shared vision, could that shared vision just be not something as big as taking on, like you said, Birkat Cholim or whatever? Could it just be like having children or just being good to each other? Meaning, I feel like not to complicate it almost.
So
is that an option?
I actually think in reality, that's what tends to happen. Not everyone gets a chance to make a noticeable impact. Not every couple end up being what's called like a power couple that get their name in print. Most of us are just like regular people trying to build a beautiful home. But the idea can be, like you just said, it's kid focused, it could be family focused. That particular community that you're in, part of your vision could be to be an active part of your community. It's just that sense of having an overall sense of responsibility, that you're not just two people living together, that your marriage and your home is there with something that you stand for. So again, you're right. In real life, most ordinary folks are just trying to do what's right, but in that just what's right comes a lot of responsibility.
It's very clear. That answer it? You good, Siri? Okay, good. Everybody's not in there. Okay, so what's the next one? Number 2, don't marry a mirror of your personality. The pair of your home.
Oh my gosh. So this is a crazy thing, because when you're a teen, and unfortunately,
a teen? You mean like a teenager?
A teenager. Okay, this is what. When I was a teen, I literally thought I could conquer the world. It was the funnest part. I grew up in London in the 70s. A great time to be a teen. And I grew up with girlfriends, and we had a lot of fun. And what I looked for in a girlfriend as a teen was someone that shared interests. We liked the same music. We liked to travel to the same places. We knew how to have fun together. That's what I was looking for as a teen. I went through this transition. And as I turned into, I guess, what we call today an adult, although I hate the word adult, I don't actually see myself as an adult. My wife constantly reminds me that I still have, the mindset of a child, and she enjoys it. That's for another moment to discuss. But the point is that at a certain point, I transitioned and I realized that if I want my home to stand for something, not just someone I want to have fun with, I'm actually looking for someone very, very different from me. And the trick of marriage is to find someone who is very, very different from you. And works differently, and the two of you work as a team in harmony. When I say very, very different, I don't mean your values. I mean personality-wise. So again, sticking with the marriage, I know I'm the dreamer, I'm the poet, I'm the musician. My wife is very organized, she's put together. My wife remembers the names of every single one of the grandkids. She knows every single phone number we've ever had since we got married. I'm happy that I remember my wife's name. The main reason why I bring daughters into this world so that they can remember and remind me about our anniversary and things like that. We work very differently. But the point is that it's that difference that gives the, so to speak, the magic to the home. Now, I want to point out something. This is very, very important to point out. The more different you are, the more exciting is your marriage, but the harder you're going to have to work to make it happen. So you got to be like smart about it. In the biblical marriages, they were all 10s and 1s because these people were building the Jewish nation.
What's a 10 and 1?
I'll tell you exactly.
Okay.
So Abraham was a 10 in what's called kindness, in bringing in guests. His wife Sarah was the extreme opposite. She was what's called in the Hebrew gevura, which means inner strength, which means, hey, not so fast, which means let's think this through. She was that core strength of the home, while Abraham was doing the exact opposite. Their children, Rebecca and Isaac, they flipped everything around. Isaac's vision was that inner strength. Rebecca was the one that was doing all the loving kindness. They were very, very different from each other, personality-wise, but they were building the Jewish people and they knew how to make it work. For most of us, if you are a 6 and a 4, if you're a 5 and a 5, you're an incredibly boring marriage. This is like whatever, you might as well just be like two friends hanging out together. 6 and a 4, that's good. 7 and a 3, your marriage is going to be spectacular, but boy, you're going to have to work on it. 8 and 2, you're probably in therapy. That's how these things work. And at certain points, I'll give you an example of what I mean by maybe in therapy. Let's imagine that, take my marriage, flip it around. Classic example. You have the female, the woman, she's a dreamer. She likes to sing, she likes to dance, she's into music. Her husband is an accountant. He knows how to run the finance. It's a great marriage. But then when they have that night when they have to go to their cousin's wedding, so then you got to be very careful because she's still trying to figure out which shoes are going to match the outfit. He's already exactly at the split second when they said, we're going to leave the house at 7 o'clock. He's ready. She's still like, still discussing things with her sister about what she's going to wear. At this point, the marriage has got to be like, woohoo, okay, everyone's got to figure this out. You're different. That's what makes your marriage special. Now, when this comes at a tension point, so the two of you have to work on this to make sure that everything is run smoothly.
So you're saying that the more different the two marriages are, so how do women who are an 8 and a 2 or a 5 and a 5 or whatever, how do they work? The habit you're talking about is being angry or frustrated or upset that your husband is different than you. You're kind of giving us permission to be okay with the fact of how different he is.
That my point, what to avoid is to try and look for a spouse that is your mirror image. The point I was trying to make is, vive la différence. It is beautiful to be different. And that's what makes your marriage exciting. Actually, it's one of the things that attracts us because very often we're looking for things that we don't have. So if you are the more quiet type and you see a guy who's exciting, right? He's got like, he's got like this charisma and he's extroverted. So it attracts you and he's attracted to you because he wants to have a girl who's a little bit on the quiet side. He doesn't need another him. It's a beautiful thing, but it will create problems in the marriage because at certain points, these two things
challenges to get over.
We're not allowed to say the word problems. Challenging. Okay,
no, I'm just saying that in other words, because we're not talking, some of our people who are listening, some of you guys are not singles or divorced or whatever and looking for a spouse, but a good majority are people who are already in a marriage and in a relationship. And so we have to make sure that they get the advice, not like you should marry this person. They're already married to this person. So how do they deal with those vive la différence now? I just dealt with a couple. This is actually very funny because I so see both sides of the story over here. One of my students
She comes from a good, solid Russian family. Okay, so whatever it is, she learned how to play piano by the time she was 2. She was like a professional ballerina by the time she turned 4. She came from one of those homes, and she was attracted to an amazing young man, an all-American boy that came from Kansas City. Like, this was like marriage made in heaven. They fell in love, great marriage. But the point is that this boy, every time that let's see, for example, right, if he would fall off his bicycle when he was a kid, when he was a teen, he'd fall off his bike, he'd come home, he'd have a little cut on his knee. So his mother would say, "Oh, poor you, that must so hurt," and give him a hug. And they would run to get ice cream. We don't do Ben and Jerry's, but run to get ice cream. And that was just, that's the way that he grew up. And she grew up at home. She fell off the bike. She would come home, deal with problem. That's it. Okay. Put on plaster. That's it. Get up and move on. Which parents are right? It's 2 different parenting styles. They're both perfect. They're both different. But when you marry someone who's used to this different style, you're going to have to do a lot. It's very, very frustrating. So this, my student, this Russian girl, had to learn how to give empathy and to feel bad for her husband when she's really thinking, just get a life, stop being such a baby. And thank God they're doing great. They really are doing great, but they needed to make that adjustment. They had a spectacular marriage, but it needed hard work because they were definitely 7-3 or borderline 8-2s, without a question.
In terms of personality. Okay, let's go into the next habit to avoid. What's that one?
Okay, I'm sorry, I got to look at my list at this point.
Number
now.
3, it's not enough to love your spouse. You need to respect them and the way they see the world.
Okay, so this is something that in our society, which is a beautiful and somewhat healthy thing, is that marriages begin with a date. Okay, and a date really works around. When I used to date, my mother, of blessed memory, used to always ask the first question, "Did you laugh together?" That was her first question. Did you laugh together? And yeah, and there's no question. The relation has to begin with laughter, with fun, enjoying each other's company. You're building your best friend. You want to get old together and still laugh together about the same silly jokes that you did when you were teens. That's definitely what's called, the foundation work of how marriage works, is this incredibly powerful thing called love. But it is not going to be enough, because in real life, when you've got this vision and you want to build something, so there's going to be moments when you see things differently, when you're making big decisions of what kind of home you want to have, what kind of school you want to send your kids, where you want to live, what kind of maybe synagogue you want to be involved in, or when you're making like really harsh decisions. You go back to Abraham and Sarah. Sarah wants to kick out her child, Ishmael. Remember, Ishmael grew up in the home of Abraham and Sarah. And Abraham says, "No way. This young man is part of my vision. We're keeping Ishmael in." They are having a major conflict. They need to arbitrate. Well, they don't have Leah Rishheimer to help them. So they go straight to God, Abraham and Sarah. Listen to what God says to Abraham. He doesn't say, "Sarah's right." He says, listen to her voice. Listen to her voice. Listen to where she's coming from. Listen to her inner vision. Which means that if you don't have tons of respect for the viewpoint of your spouse, you're going to end up having problems between the two of you. What does it mean, respect? If you want to do something radical, you have to make sure you have your spouse fully on your side. If you can't get her fully on your side, sit down with her, discuss it with her through the language of softness and gentleness, and get her at least to say, "This is so important for me. On this particular thing, I would like you to agree with me." And that's what happened in the story of Abraham and Sarah. That's what happened. Sarah won the day because she was so passionate about what she believed in, and Abraham understood the need to respect his spouse's wishes. And that is not just in the biblical stories, all the way to the way you and I run our homes.
A lot of women, Rabbi, sorry to interrupt, but a lot of women are frustrated because they feel like their viewpoint isn't respected. Like maybe they're going to be big enough. Maybe the reason their husband doesn't respect them is because they don't respect their husband, and he needs more respect, and he's starving for respect. And so, then he's not respecting them, and they're just mad. And I'm not going to respect him if he doesn't respect me. And it's a whole vicious cycle. The question is, for the frustration that women feel, I hear this all the time, that women feel lack of respect. How do you start the ball rolling when you're the one who's feeling lacking in that?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you something that you're going to roll your eyes and say, Rabbi Nissel, get real. But I'm going to tell you what I honestly believe. I tell you what I try very, very hard and do. My job is to be the best husband I can be. King Solomon, in his wisdom, said, "Kamaim panim el panim," that relationships work like a mirror. I have to do everything I can to give my wife her respect, to try and understand where she's coming from. I mentioned beforehand, I'm British, he's from Memphis. It's so different. Oh my gosh. Okay, London and the South, two different universes. I'm still tormented. When I first came to Memphis for the first time, I met my father-in-law. He should be well and healthy.
Amen.
And he said to me, son, if it's all right with you, it's all right with me. He said it much slower. He said it, you know what I mean? He's like the sloth in Zootopia. He just likes to, and I realized, oh my gosh, London is fast-paced. Everything is like cosmopolitan, and the South is everything like after you, like a four-way stop sign in Memphis. Nobody moves. It's a totally different way of seeing the world. Yeah. So I had to I learned the beauty of the South. I learned the beauty of the way that they do things, and I learned the beauty of the way that my wife brings that into our home, but it was hard for me. And meanwhile, my wife had to figure out how the British are strange in what we do. Whatever it is, we got we're obsessed with eating with your mouth closed and making sure you always walk around with your tissues. Everything the Brits do, this is our little things that we're into. So you focus on your job and do it to the best of your ability. And then what will happen, most cases, is that it's going to be reflected back on you. And if you just have to be patient and patient and patient. There are red lines that sometimes get crossed, and then you need to figure out a way of doing things in a way that you don't sound like you're draining on that person, and you get your point in an incredibly clever, loving way. I always tell the ladies, I say, you don't have to use your mouth and criticize or nag. You can use your eyes. Eyes are very powerful. Your eyes, your husband knows exactly what you're thinking by with 1 second looking at your eyes. And you can communicate. When you're proud of what your husband's doing, you show him with your eyes. If you're frustrated, you don't say a word, but he knows. And what you're trying to look for at the end of the day is to push away that sense of tension by focusing on what you can do for your spouse. And then what will happen in most cases is that it's going to bounce back to you.
That's awesome. Hold on. We have a question that okay, go ahead. Because then we're going to go into the next one. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there's, what's it called? Yeah, so that's really what the question is that if people are having those, already they're coming from different backgrounds and having to deal with different things. The way the rabbi is saying it, it's, it sounds obviously what everyone wants, but that's not the reality of it. The reality that you're bringing all this baggage from where you're coming from, and now you have to sort of make it all work, and all that, love at the beginning goes out the door the minute you start butting heads on things. So practically, how do you do that?
Okay, so let's go back to using my imaginary number system. And your marriage is coming in as a 7 and a 3. Whatever it may be, it's just like it happens all the time. People come from different countries, from different value systems. My mother was German. My father was Romanian. Oh my gosh. When my father went to visit my mother's parents, they were expecting Attila the Hun. I mean, this is like crazy what people go through. People can be very different. If you know right up front that you are a 7 and a 3, I'm always going to make a joke over here. It's like a Californian marrying a New Yorker. This is like whatever it is. But the point is that if you are coming into the marriage, the first thing you need to do is recognize that you're going to be very different. Now, the power of love the corollary of the power of love is the power of wanting to be curious and understand where your spouse is coming from. This has to be the foundation block, this curiosity of trying to figure out their culture, to figure out the gender differences, to figure out the home differences that people bring into their marriages.
And not being annoyed about it. So many students say, well, he does this and he does that and whatever. And he's like, yeah, he's not like you, so even though sometimes it can be frustrating, and I can't tell you, ladies, how many times I'll have somebody complain about something that was it brings them a lot of things. Like someone says, oh, I married my husband and he pats everybody on the back and he's a big Heverman and he's the big man on campus wherever we go. And I married him because of that. But now it's like he pays less attention to me and he's paying attention to everybody else. And so they're mad about that. And I'm like, you chill with what you got. This is what God gave you. This is what you wanted. And then they find out maybe years later that the fact that their husband's patting everyone on the back. So he became very friendly with a doctor who helped them, one of their kids. And he, because he's so friendly or whatever, she was sitting in the back of the shul and she really wanted to sit in the front. But, whatever it is, that the things that we think are for sure bad or for sure good, there's always a different side to it. And I think if you keep that in perspective, it will answer what Rabbi's saying, which is that
beautiful. I just wanted to add another 2 cents. And that is when you have your private moments together, the conversation shouldn't be like, okay, let's go through the kids, let's go through the finances. One of the things that people forget to do in that conversation is to really, when you say the question, how are you doing? How was your day? It should be a question where you're showing genuine interest about what's happening in your spouse's life. Now, with that, it's not just like a diary. I did this today, I did that today, is to understand her feelings and to understand her emotions and to understand her frustrations. And you get to know the person that's very different from you. And because you love them, you care about seeing the way that they see the world. So this is something and if the ladies are listening, you do this for your husband. He'll want to do this back to you. He'll see that, okay, wow, okay, that's crazy. My wife is a painter. She wants to know what I do when I'm doing my accounts. So this is like, whoa. So then I need to understand your world very, very deeply. I'll tell you something, a little secret. After a while, you won't have to work hard on doing this. You'll actually enjoy appreciating that the person that you love the most, your best friend, to really understand what she's all about and where she's coming from and what she's doing with her life and the way that she's thinking. That is something you tap into that, and then she'll want to do the same thing with you. That's how the two of you become this team.
Right. So we're talking to women now. And so the women come to me and they say, Leah, I'd love to know what my husband's, I would say, how was the day? Fine. What did you do? Fine. Nothing. How did this go? Great. They are getting this one way answer. And we actually there's many shows that go back to www.ladiestalkshow.com and you'll see a lot of shows there on communication and listening and how listening brings your husband to love you more. And there's a lot of tips and techniques of that. But the bottom line from what Rabbi is saying is that if you have show that curiosity and that interest, it'll come back to you. I just want to highlight that for the women's point of view.
I think sometimes before you have your conversation, it may be helpful to think of the questions that you want to ask. And sometimes you ask people about what's happening in their lives. It sounds like you're asking like a school teacher. So where were you then? What were you doing now? A little bit to understand the emotional dynamics of what your spouse's life is all about. By the way, it's exactly the same thing with parenting. It's the worst thing you can do. How was your day? And a little bit to understand your child and what they're going through. They're different from you. Same thing with your spouse. They're different from you. To try a little bit to understand their mind space, and specifically their emotional mind space, is to try and tap into that.
It's awesome. Okay, we had a question, so go ahead with your question, and I want to get to the next one. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, we're going to hold off. I want to just hold off because I want to hear we're getting kind of close, so I just want to hear, there was like a...
So we didn't start on the hour, so we're okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No.
I know,
okay,
I also got confused. We're good.
Okay, no, okay, good.
Okay, so you can ask your question.
Okay, so no, in terms of, it's funny that the rabbi was saying that's actually my own personal thing. Is my parents were Sephardi and Ashkenaz, so Hungarian and Yemenite coming together. So it was like, explosion of different worlds. But even my husband and I coming from, he's coming from a more Americanized, proper kind of home. And we were just louder and more like, kind of, I would say in your face. That's probably the hardest thing, was to try to bridge the gap. And I found that it's till today, married, Kanai Nahar, 25 years, I still find it hard to sometimes walk away from what I have or my sort of ideas of how things need to be done because of the history that I have of it. It's just still hard. I don't know.
But you never give up. You never give up. This is
that's why I'm part of the ladies talk show. That's why I work with Leah, because I'm like, I don't want to give up.
Anyhow, so yes, always that wasn't really a question. That was basically a State of the Union address.
Right.
Yeah, basically. It was kind of like a cry for help of like, is there anything like a switch you could turn on that says, you both come from the same thing? Or you would think like after 25 years, I'd be able to overcome some of it. So that's, I feel challenged by it.
I just, it's one of the tricks that we can always do, is to try and freeze into our brains that moment or those days of the original attraction. Because very, very often what makes somebody exciting is that they're different from you. And whenever you can, and you're getting like frustrated, remember that's why you fell in love with him in the first place. I mean, how exotic is it if you come from like Kansas and you're marrying a girl from, from Yemenite? Oh my God, how exciting could that be? This is like, oh, go me. That's it. Am I going to be able to sing like them? I'm going to have pretty eyes like them? What's it going to be like? So the point is, that was the original attraction. Don't ever lose sight of what made them attractive in the first place. So then it's much easier to deal with when the complexities of those differences start to bear out.
That's fantastic. Okay.
Right. So, and Leah, just something funny, Rabbi, because you said about the Yemenite. So my husband, he thought, wow, I'm marrying a Yemenite, right? She's going to be subservient. She's going to polish my shoes. The Sephardi women, the husband's the king. And then he's like, he marries me, and I'm like, I got Hungarian in me. And so the only thing I know how to do is buy shoes. I have no idea how to polish shoes. So the poor man was like, I was like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
There you go. I think he did okay, sorry. Okay, let's go on to the number 5. It says, number 4, big decisions must be made as a team. This often means softening or changing your strongly held views. And this is one of the 7 habits to avoid.
Yeah, so the thing is as follows. People have, there's 2 types of things that we have. We have like huge principles, and then we have those little things that are kind of easy to work through. Huge principles can be devastating in a marriage. The example I gave earlier on was, shall we kick a child out of our house? This was the dilemma that Abraham and Sarah in biblical times actually had. It's crazy. That's an absolutely crazy thing. What happens if you're arguing about there's one child who's toxic and affecting the other children, and one spouse says, we got to keep them, and one says, no, that child has to leave? What happens if you are arguing about a fundamental question about your level of religiosity? What happens if one of you gets a job offer in a different city? It means relocating everything, and the other spouse says, there's no way I'm going there. So these are the big decisions that happen in real life. How on earth do you work these things through? And the answer is, you work slowly, intimately, you talk things through slowly but surely in a setting that is not confrontational, and eventually one of you is going to have to give way. And how does that work?
What's a setting that's not confrontational? Just a time out of sec. What would that be?
I know that if I had to make a big decision with my wife, would have to make sure that it's during, first of all, a time of the day where none of us are under pressure. Just another bizarre thing about my marriage, which works out beautifully for raising kids. I am a night person, and my wife is a morning person. That's great. Okay, it's a beautiful thing. My wife wakes up at the crack of dawn with a big smile at the eyes. And she says, Mother, honey, thank you, God, for another beauty. And she's get up and the world is full of sunshine and rainbows and butterflies. I get up in the morning. The first 20 minutes, I'm thinking about one thing and one thing only, coffee. That's it. That's how my brain works. She knows. She can't talk to me that first hour of the day. But everything flips around 10 o'clock in the evening, where suddenly my wife, suddenly there's like hair coming out of her palms and she turns into this werewolf. And everyone goes, Mom, go to sleep, Emma. So it's great for raising kids because it means that until 3 a.m., Daddy's in charge. And from 3 a.m. onwards, Mommy's in charge, or whatever it works out. Of course, our kids will wake up exactly at 3. It's your turn to get the kid, whatever. That's the way it happens. So it's the same thing. You have to figure out a time which is a good time in the 24-hour clock. Very often, it could be that if you are people that enjoy going to restaurants and everyone do what we like. My wife and I are walkers. We love to go for walks with each other. So when we walk, so that's when all these good discussions come out. It's just the way it works in my particular marriage. We don't like restaurants. It's just not our personality unless someone else is paying and it's very fancy. We like to walk. So that's it. And then we talk things through and back and forth. And I hear what you're saying, hear what we're saying, and sometimes we'll say, you know what, let's not decide yet. Let's think it over. And then we come over, and then somebody has to give in. And that needs a lot of inner strength. And basically, if you're smart, you know your spouse. You know, there are times that are things that are so important for the person that you love. You have to give up something that is very, very important for you. I want to give a shout out to my wife that my first year of marriage, she came, a Memphis girl, she moved to London while I was doing my MBA. She came on her own. It was a very difficult period of my life. I just lost my mother in a car accident. It was a crazy year. And she took in, she was a young girl, and she took control. She did everything for me. And I'll never forget that. I'll never, ever forget that. And it's worked out very, very well for me. Now we are, thank God, 37 years later. And as I told to Leah, I injured my arm 6 weeks ago. I shattered my humerus in different places. And my wife literally took over for me. She took over for me. I became working at 30% capacity, and all the investment on people learning how to give up on important things in the early years. So afterwards, when you get older, it becomes much easier.
Wow. Okay, we're running out of time, so we've got to go right on to number 5, which is a home is not just a place for relaxation and laughter. It must be permeated with holiness.
Well, okay,
what do you mean?
This is something very, very important. This is my rabbi side coming out in full force. A home's got to be a place where you chill. You come to our house for Shabbat meal. There's no question about it. The focus is on laughter and fun and good times, enjoying the food. But at the same time, it has to have a permeation throughout of an atmosphere that this is a place where you are building your own temple. This is your little, what's called in Hebrew, Mikdash Ma'at, your own microcosm of the ancient temple. God and man is happening in your house with the husband and wife. Together, you're building something holy. So it means that when you walk into your home, Maimonides, the great Rambam, Maimonides says, you come into a Jewish home, there's a thing called a mezuzah. A mezuzah, you kiss it when you walk in. A mezuzah, says Maimonides, is like the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. It's a wake-up call. A Jewish home stands for something. A Jewish home has a certain amount of holiness. So a Jewish home could be, again, it should be a fun place, should be relaxing, but everyone knows that this is your little temple and that it actually stands for something. And it bears out because at your Shabbat table, there's candles lit. And the Shabbat table has the Kiddush and the Chalas and everything like that, the Torah thoughts that you share, reminding you that you are trying to create something eternal, something much more than just 1 and 1 equals 2, but rather 1 and 1 equals a microcosm of the Jewish Holy Temple.
So you're saying the holiness is created, it's funny, there's a word called spiritual, and it has the word ritual in it. So you're saying lighting the candles, doing the challah, all the rituals that enrich your life are what makes it holy? I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
I tell you, it's an interesting thing. It's not just the rituals. I'll give you an example. Let's say you like different types of genres of music. So there's certain types of music that are more elevated, something like that you enjoy, but it's not so elevated. I grew up in London in the 70s. Yes, my friends and I did notice the passing of the drummer of the Rolling Stones last week. It was a certain moment in our lives. In the place, my home, in the place where I have my Shabbat table, the walls will only hear music that is elevated music. We didn't even discuss this, my wife and I. If you want to listen to whatever it is, to different genres of music, you got your car. That's why there's a thing called the Zumba, where a nice, good Jewish girl can fantasize that she's a Latino dancer. But the Jewish home, you keep that, you give a certain sense of holiness in that home. Another example, I never said this to my wife, we never discussed this, she does this on her own. And the way that when she dresses, in the way she walks around in that part of the house where we have the Shabbat table, she lights her candles, I have all my holy books. So she dresses with a certain sense of dignity. She raises the level the way she dresses than the way she will do it in her bedroom or even in the kitchen. So all of these things are sensitivities to remind yourself that your living room, your salon has got a certain aura of holiness to it because of what we do there. That's the place where we're going to have our Seder night. That's the place where in Rosh Hashanah, which is coming up soon, that we're going to wish a new year to our families and to all our loved ones.
That's beautiful. Okay, we're out of time, but let's go on to number 6. An open home is beautiful, but to succeed, it must be balanced with privacy.
So we spoke this through, so you've got that covered. Okay. That's the idea that the bedroom is the holy of holies, the idea of having private time. Even if you're raising kids, you got to get away from the kids. And it's the best thing you can do for your children, and focus on each other to the exclusion of everybody else. Always have those magical moments between the two of you, the way that the two of you enjoy each other's company, so that you can recalculate, refocus, re-energize the marriage. Remind yourselves of that bigger vision. Privacy is crucial. The private moment is crucial for the success of the marriage.
Okay, we have another question, but I'm going to go to this one and then you do the questions. Is that okay? Okay. Number 7 is throughout your life together, never stop working on making your marriage special. Okay, so I'd love to hear what you have to say.
This is absolutely incredible because I mentioned already, I've been married 37 years, and our marriage has gone through a lot of different stages, a lot of different countries. We've gone through a lot together, and it's important to remember that it never ever ends. The idea to constantly work on making your marriage the best it can be and never take anything for granted. Sometimes people say, the early years you got to work very hard, afterwards you can let it down. Wrong. It's a famous story that the angels, when they came to visit Abraham, the story about Abraham and the 4 angels that came along and to tell him that Sarah was going to have a child. So the story says that the angels told Sarah, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And they said that, Sarah is in the tent. And the rabbis bring down because they wanted to show that Sarah she was an incredibly beautiful woman, but she was also incredibly modest. And the rabbi says they wanted to make Sarah feel beautiful in the eyes of her husband. They wanted to make it endearing to their husband. Now remember, he was 100 years old. She was 90. We're not talking about a young couple that are having, they're just building their marriage. This is Abraham and Sarah, the greatest people that ever lived. You still need to work on your marriage. You cannot take anything for granted. And therefore, the compliments, the special time together, the special date nights, or the equivalent that works for your marriage, you do this in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I always tell my students, you want to know what's beautiful? I'll tell you, the most beautiful thing you can ever see in America. Go to Miami Beach, and you go over there, the Miami Beach, where the boardwalk is. I would never go there because I'm a rabbi, but you all know, okay? It's gorgeous. America, and then you see this old couple that are walking hand in hand. And the old man is looking at his wife with those same eyes that he looked at his wife on the day he married her. You can see it. And he's surrounded by all these gorgeous young ladies that are dressed beach style. But he wants to look at his wife. And you ask me, who's the most beautiful woman you see? It's his wife, and he's not lying. That is something that had to be earned through hard work with years and years and years of constantly focusing on your marriage as you go through your ups and downs, as you go through your changes. You never ever give up.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, last question. And
No. So the comments are just that it's such incredible information. It's sad because people today forget later marriages. People today, even at the first year or two of marriage, are having such struggles to even get to that point. So
now we have a good get-to point. This has been very edifying, very awesome. Really, really loved having you on the show. Did you have one final thing you want to say? Oh, how can people reach you?
First of all, I just wanted to say that if I could say one message to my audience, is that the American society, the mindset, especially celebrity marriages, is that people are obsessed with their careers. I need to get this out there because I want to share this with you. You go and ask a person in America, what do you do? And they will answer, I am a dentist. Almost as if that when they die, you expect their tombstone to be in the shape of a tooth. People are self-define themselves with their careers. People, the celebrities, are for sure that way, and it trickles down all the way into the way that we think. No, if I ask you, what do you do? The first thing you say, the first thing you should want to say is that I'm married, I'm building a Jewish home, or whatever home that you're trying to build. For our non-Jewish listeners, you're building a Christian home, you're building a Muslim home, you're building something. That's what I'm doing. Your first focus in life is your spouse. Your second focus is your children. Then you can build the world around you in a way that makes sense. But you got that core right, you got everything right. You got that core right, you can look forward to getting old together. You never ever will get bored of each other's company. And I'll tell you the secret, it just gets better and better. You invest when you're young, it just gets better and better and better. And that's my blessing to you from Jerusalem. That really is.
Amen. Rabbi Nissel, this was fabulous. He's got a fabulous book called Recalculate. And also you can find him on, you have a YouTube channel. Just type in Menachem, oh, there it is. Fantastic. Menachem, M-E-N-A-C-H-E-M, Nissel, N-I-S-S-E-L. And you can find him on his YouTube channel. This has been very edifying. Very appreciate your coming on the show. Thank you, Sarit, Ilana. This is Leah Richheimer for the Ladies Talk Show. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Here's the thing, ladies. If you don't subscribe, you may miss out and you're going to miss some great content. So you need to either like us or follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, on Torah Anytime, on YouTube, or go right to our website, www.ladiestalkshow.com, and fill in a subscription button. And then you'll get every week an update on exactly what's happening. And if you do that, oh, by the way, if you subscribe on our website, you also get 10 tips to have a great relationship. Don't miss it. And don't forget